When was your last true full day off from work? When I'm saying true full day, I mean, like, did you check emails? Were you taking messages? I mean, did you really get away? Were you still kind of thinking, maybe jotting some notes down? Don't forget, need to do this on Monday. Too daggone long for some of us, huh? Sometimes, yeah, sometimes we could, use that sense of adventure, really getting away, from work, kind of like that roaming vacation and leaving, getting out of town. And then sometimes there are times when we just need some true R&R, just a little downtime. And that would be kind of like that staycation kind of time to chill out with no responsibilities, right? So then there are, these opportunities here that we're going to take a look at both of these sides, whether it's getting out of Dodge and away from town or if it's sticking around close and just relaxing. So we want to use this time in this session today to figure out how our break time or our leave time can best serve us to get a reset, if you will, feel rested and relaxed when we return. Now let's put on our dreaming and thinking caps. So, and I want you to think about your quieter side. And if you were wanting to really tap into some low-key R&R, rest and relaxation to recharge, which of these kind of happy places, if you will, might you be most likely to choose? Like that first one up on the top left, A. Might it be like a mountain retreat and just overlooking a vista, like a view like that? Or maybe you choose to seclude yourself in a nice warm beach area and just pull back and kick away from everybody, right? Maybe you're just cool and hanging out in your own backyard, a nice peaceful backyard, looking at some flowers. Yeah. Or D, maybe you like possibly that peaceful lakeside or, water, retreat, sitting in a kayak or a canoe. This is kind of thinking on that quieter side if you just really need that R&R, that relaxation and recharge time. Now think of it from this angle. What if you're tapping in to that adventurous side and you just really want to get out and get away and experience something different? So up here on your screen, I've got A. You could maybe go with maybe some adventure, biking or hiking, or if you're into hang gliding or zip lining or something like that. That might be A for you, or possibly the people who like ocean cruising or, taking a big ride on a boat with 500 of your closest friends. I don't know. Possibly at sea. You like tours and maybe you're into the museum thing or going to a botanical garden tour like we've got here on your screen. Or maybe you like that big city exploring, that urban checking it all out thing. There are times, right, that we need the R&R side, and then other times we need, just a nice change of scenery and to kind of get out of Dodge. But, when you think about it, we can all think about, dream about, wish for things and places where we'd like to go, what we'd like to do, things like that. But really, when it comes right down to it, maybe we don't have the energy, or maybe we don't have the finances, or maybe we don't even have enough of the time built up here at work, that we can go on that trip out of town, if that's what it is that you're wanting to do. Um, but that leave time, it's a coveted benefit, and we want to be sure we maximize it and get the most out of it. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully learn how to make the most of our vacation time so that when we do return, we feel rested and relaxed and recharged and ready to rock and roll. So let's take a look at what our objectives are going to be over the next half hour to 45 minutes or so. We're going to take a look at the benefits and some self-imposed barriers to taking time off. All right, because we know we sometimes put up our own barriers or things get in the way. We're also going to examine the pros and cons of a staycation versus vacation. So if you're not sure what the heck you're talking about there, we'll get into that. Then we're going to identify some strategies for that restorative, rested feeling when we do get back here. Ready to rock and roll? So we're going to begin with the obvious and those benefits, and maybe looking at some of those self-imposed barriers. Let me get you to think I'm confident that we'll touch on what some of the barriers are. But let's start first with what you see as the best benefit of taking time off. There are so daggone many benefits, aren't they? Yeah, there are. So let's take a look at some of these in addition to what you've shared here. So, a couple key insights is to, particularly in line with this objective, is to recognize how taking time away from work. Got somebody needing in. I'm going to go ahead and admit them. Taking time away from work isn't just good for us, the employee, but it's also good for our employer and our team, right? It can be very helpful, as you guys mentioned over here in chat, physically, mentally, emotionally, keeps you recharged, right? Getting away from the routine, Matt. So let's take a look at some of these benefits, right? First of all, we actually can get like a little cognitive reboot, if you will. And that DMN means tapping into what's referred to as a default mode network. And this is actually when our brain becomes active while at rest. Kind of sounds like a little bit of an oxymoron, right? But it's essential for things like problem solving and connecting complex ideas, but also it's crucial for things just like some self reflection, maybe some emotional processing and social interaction, right? And some mental exploration. You ever notice how sometimes some of your coolest, best ideas come when you're not engaged in full-on task mode, right? That's that default mode network that our brain is in. And it's a pretty cool thing. But you got to take time to pause and get away in order to tap into that. Here's another benefit. Obviously, you would get it, some physical benefits here. And they would be ones that you would anticipate. You'd gather it'd probably be some reduction in blood pressure because we're not stressed and wired with everything that we have on our plate. Hopefully, we're calmed down a little bit when we're rest, and as a part of that, it can reduce risk for heart disease and also the sleep piece. That's pretty huge when you're thinking about that. I don't know how you guys are, but you get busy with work and all the tasks and the to-do list. It can be hard sometimes to shut that off when you're asleep or when you wake in the middle of the night to get back to sleep because you got that to-do list running. So, if you're stepping away and taking some time to do that, hopefully you'll see some benefits and improved sleep pattern there, right? Also can help on the stress front, right? Buffers us a little bit from some of that high anxiety stuff that we may be dealing with day in, day out. That's just lots of things that we all have on our plate, right? So even if it's a partial vacation, right? Just a 3 to 4 day long weekend. That's kind of nice. We just had, but those are effective in reducing psychological impact, right? Of the workplace stress. So that's how we're talking about some stress buffering, right? So another thing, I'm looking to see if you add anything else in chat. We can that benefits. And what I'm talking about there kind of ties in with some of those physical health benefits up there, but mental health, we're reducing our cortisol, right? Because we're less stressed when we get that opportunity to take some time off and not be full on charging at it all day. And it can help us prevent some of that burnout and just fatigue that we have from working our long days, which, by the way, burnout, it affects about 50% of our workforce. And we all experience that. So this vacation time, those benefits are very important to use. Also can help, believe it or not, our employer. It doesn't just help us, but it helps the employer because a culture that encourages vacation will actually see increased work performance because you feel more charged, more invigorated, ready to work when you return, right? And it can have a big impact on significantly lowering that turnover rate. So if you've ever worked in a unit or department when you're short staffed, we all know that can be stressful because we're all trying to pick up those loose ends, right? Get a little thumbs up there. Yippers. Okay, moving on. So now, yes, we are absolutely talking about vacation time for the most part in this session, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how there's even a benefit from stepping away from your screen, even if it's like a little 10-15 minute walk around the floor or outside of the building if you can get out, which is nice, particularly when the weather's good. I've tried some of these, and your high blood pressure is becoming less of a problem. There is a creativity hack, if you're learning to rest your brain a little bit, stepping away from your screen, but definitely more if you're taking some paid time off and using that time to recharge. On the bigger front, did you know that almost 62% of American workers don't use all of their paid time off? 62%. Does that shock you guys? Yes, no? So yeah, on the big front, that's 62% of America's not. And I checked with Lisa Tully in our payroll department. I said, "Hey Lisa, can you tell me the Office of Shared Administration, give me an idea how many employees carry leave time over at the end of the year?" And in 2025, we had well over hundreds. We'll just say hundreds of employees that rolled time over because they didn't get an opportunity to use their leave time. Now, it's pretty cool that we do have an opportunity, if we do have leave time that rolls over, that we can donate that if we, need have an opportunity to do that. That's neat that we do it. This leave benefit or time off is one of the best benefits that we get as state employees in it, because we do get that on the screen as the leave accruals that we get here. So, it's important to realize that we're not necessarily saving the agency money by not using our leave. Perhaps we may actually be costing the department's money or costing our work money if you think about that prior screen, because it can impact things like productivity and creativity and retention and burnout and those things. So keeping those things in mind. Do you guys recognize the importance of disconnecting at work and taking some time off? So this objective is, if you remember, we're talking about the benefits, but we're also talking about some of the self-imposed barriers that we have in taking our time off. So let's discuss some of those, right? Some of those barriers. The disconnect of disconnecting. What the heck is that? Why is it? Or what's the biggest barrier that you have to taking time off? Why is it that you don't put it in or you're not using it? What keeps you from using that time? But to be successful in disconnecting and not letting that energy get drained from overwhelm, from taking time off, right? It's important to treat your time off, you guys, whether it's a staycation or a vacation, with the same intentions: to rest and restore. Because you guys gave me thumbs up, right? You recognize the benefits. It's just so hard to disconnect, even if we're off. I asked you, when was the last time you guys had a full day? It's like, oh, it's been May, it's been January, it's been a month, So even just checking our phone or tapping into our emails when we're off, that kind of stuff. It's kind of, yeah, there are definite barriers, whether we put them on ourselves, having somebody cover for us. How about this one? Why is it that we feel guilty for resting? Is that a generational thing? I don't know. I don't know what that is, but how can we overcome that feeling of guilt? Well, here are some key insights, you guys, I want you to keep in mind. Bottom line is, guilt serves no one. It really doesn't serve us well if we're feeling guilt. Wellness is our own personal responsibility. It is our own personal responsibility. I'm going to admit Jason there. Okay. And the rest and recovery that we get, it's a prerequisite of our performance when you think about it. All those benefits that we talked about on the prior slides, right? So it's a prerequisite for performance. It's not a reward, right? So think of it it's just shifting our perspective there, or at least chilling, so that when we do need to come back and do things, that we feel recharged to do that. Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on, you guys, to this second objective that we have. And this is the bit about the whole staycation versus a vacation. All right. So what the heck am we talking about? This objective, we're going to examine the location of your station, whether it's staycation or vacation, right? So the balance is a dynamic, right? Some weeks, like we said earlier, we need 80% R&R, right? And this is when a staycation would be a perfect fit. Then there's other times where we need 80% of an adventurous getaway. And this is when getting the heck out of Dodge would be just what the doctor ordered, right? So let's take a look here at whether you're up for extensive planning and logistics, packed itineraries that recharge you, or do those types of activities leave you more exhausted than you were when you left? Right? Possibly. Your definition of R&R is just being a complete couch potato. Maybe it's reading or gaming or streaming your entertainment, right? So what is that, binge watching? Or would that leave you feeling like you maybe wasted your time off? I don't know. Staycation, vacation. So let's dive in a little bit deeper. I got a poll here I want to ask you about. This might help uh, to look at considering what's a good fit for your restoration. I want to ask you guys on your last vacation, whether it was staycation or a vacation, did you return feeling more rested, fully rested, neutral? How did you return to work? How did you feel when you got back here? Fully rested, neither rested or restored, but more now. Okay, so your thoughts all. So let's examine some pros and cons to both the vacation and the staycation. You ready? Okay, we're going to start first with the vacation, and that's roaming away from home, getting the heck out of Dodge, leaving the neighborhood. All right. So there are pros and cons. We're going to start with the pros. I put some pros here on a list. It is absolutely the anticipation of having somewhere new to go, researching locations and activities that you're going to have when you get there, and the novelty, if you will, an adventure of something new, right? Breaking out of the daily routine that we have in our life, getting out of your comfort zone, all those things are real pros, if you will, benefits of taking a vacation away from home, different perspectives. When I think about that, I think of like, you go to a place like the Grand Canyon or looking at the Grand Tetons. It's just amazing. It kind of feels like it puts your little problems into perspective, doesn't it, when you see something so grand and beautiful? So, yes, those are definitely some pros. So, there are loads of pros, right, to getting the heck out of Dodge and going someplace new. But, there's always a but, isn't there? There are also some cons to that. So, let's take a look at what some of those cons might be. What's the downfall of going out of town and taking a vacation away from home? There are some cons to it, even if you're on leave. So, yeah, some of those are things like you put them in there, you got them in chat, planning, packing, expenses, just it does require more energy. You're looking at logistics like transportation and lodging and where you're going to stay and getting everything all set up to go. So, those can be some cons. Let's consider this key insight on the vacation front. Disconnecting from familiar surroundings and your daily routine can provide a psychological boost, right? And also broaden your perspective on things and our view in life, like what we were talking about, looking at some grandiose things. So there are some definite benefits to that vacationing, right? Try not to do. Okay, let's look at the staycation side, all right? Because we got that insight there, which is kind of cool. Now we're going to flip over to look at the staycation side because there are pros and cons to that staycation too. Here's some of your pros: less impact on the pocketbook, maximizes your downtime. It's a quick brain turn off because you're already familiar with your surroundings, uninterrupted relaxation, sleeping in your own bed, right? No planning hassles. So, and there are also some hidden gems that maybe you haven't been to in your own city or town or, a store or shop or an activity you want to do. Okay, so let's help staycationers out here for a second. What are some ideas that you can think of that would add some fun or pizzazz to somebody that's going to take a staycation, stick close to home? There are some cons to the staycation. Let's shift our mindset here a little bit. What would be some of the cons to a staycation, right? What would be some of those downfalls of a staycation, right? It is tough to disconnect, right? They still track you down, old familiar surroundings. Anybody have that? You know what that FOMO is, don't you? Fear of missing out. A lot of times people seem to think that, oh, what'd you do for vacation? You feel like you're supposed to have something great that you're sharing out there. You get stuck at home, you're doing chores, some of these things up on the screen. All right. So you can see that there is a contrast between the high stimulation of a roaming vacation, that psychological detachment, and then the low pressure environment provided by a staycation. Here's a key insight, you guys. True rest actually requires some mental detachment from daily stressors, which sometimes can be achieved more easily or effectively by not even leaving home because it's familiar. I saw you guys saying sleeping in your own bed, things like that. So the staycation may offer a better nervous system reset if you think about, while roaming vacation is ideal for like a new cultural immersion. So there are pros and cons to both, but hopefully that gave you a feel for it and you're not quite sure how or still what would be a good fit for you. You could use this right before you're getting ready to decide what the heck you're going to do when you take your leave time. And it's just a B. You know, what's your primary goal for the break? Do you need more rest? Do you need a novelty getaway? You know, how much time or energy do you have to prepare? So a lot of these kinds of questions can help you decide, man. Sometimes it's just budgetary, monetary, you know. But if you're not quite sure, this is a neat little assessment that can help you make that decision if it's physical, emotional, or mental capacity to decide what it is you really need so that when you return, you do feel well rested and recharged and ready to hit the ground running, if you would, right? So, cool little tool. Hopefully, you find it helpful because once you answer those and add those up, you got some options and it gives you some direction there below. Neat. All right, so those are your first two objectives. Gives yourself on the pat on the back. We're through those. Hopefully that gave you some insight so you can come away from this session on this third objective with some specific approaches to bring some peace into any setting, whether if it's a staycation or a vacation, or to maintain your boundaries while you are on break, because as I saw in chat, they can still track you down, right? And how to tailor your time off so that you can make the most of it, feel rested and restored. So let's jump into this last objective here and get some, no matter if it's staycation or vacation, you want you using that energy well so that you're returning restored. So what would you say is your biggest rest killer, right? While you're on leave, what kills your ability to really rest? And let's start first with the staycationers. We can set some realistic expectations. Build in some time if you have some task, but also build in some time for your day to put some break time in, some playtime, right? So try to set some, just like we do at work, we get our priorities at work. Just be as intentional on your staycation time with how many chores you're going to knock off today. And if you don't get it done, you still got to get to that playtime. Bump those chores to the next day, right? Staycation. All right. So let's look at the other side to maximize that restoration on vacation. What are some things that steal your energy when you're on that roaming vacation, you guys? Those roaming vacations, we tend to put that pressure on ourselves, right? To get everything done, right? To go on others' schedule. Oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. You know, so how can we prevent that? Similar to what we were talking about on that staycation, establish some boundaries. Set some expectations before you go. This is your time too, not just your family's. You got to carve out some time for yourself. Be flexible, kind of learn to roll with it. There's some lessons to that, right? So sometimes we have to plan ahead, right? And set and stick to some of those boundaries. And I refer that to protecting your peace, right? maximize that energy. So let's take a look at protecting our peace and what we can do to protect our peace. All right. So let's start with this little tactic I refer to as prioritize and park. Anybody ever heard of that? Assume nothing, right? Prioritize and park. So let's be honest, right? So you're never going to finish everything before you leave work, right? It's there's always something more that needs to be done. But when you do try to do it all, that really only ramps up your stress as you're leaving to go. It's like, daggone, I can't get this done. I need to do that. I have this. There's always something, right? So here's what you can do. Little pre-planning, right? Identify the top one, two, three things, maybe the top three priorities that can help clear your mental runway, if you will. So when you try to do it all, that all drains you. But if you pick the top one or two, three things that hopefully you can get done before you leave, it just opens up some space. Well, I did get this done. I got that knocked off, these things, right? And then also before you leave, set up a little list of three things and put them on your parking lot. Those might be the first three things that you tap into when you return. When you return to work, that's that parking list, and put it to the side so that you know you have this is what you're going to do. So I kind of took a little stab at this with my kind of work, our work here in our department, because I can't assume I know exactly all what you guys are doing. So if we had, for example, to develop a training or have something that we were providing when we come back, I would be first, before I left, maybe trying to research some content, maybe drafting an outline, and then choosing what's the theme I want for that presentation. And then when I come back, I can dive in a little deeper, maybe starting and taking a look at what kind of graphics do I want to use, and then what activities and handouts. So these are things that I would have on my plate when I return. So it kind of has you pre-planning, so it clears your way mentally so that you have some space as you're leaving and heading out the door. You got some things knocked off. You know what you're going to do when you return. Here's another way to protect your peace. And a lot of you guys probably do this, and it's about setting boundaries, right? And communicating that with others. Um, because, if your out of office message says, I'll be checking email periodically, guess what? That's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be checking your email, and that's not really disconnecting at all, is it? So setting those clear boundaries, we can do that by sharing in our message the dates that we're going to be away, when we're going to be away, when we'll be back, that you're not going to be checking messages. And if you absolutely do need to check messages, share something like, I'll be checking email between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. for urgent matters. Other than that, I'll respond when I return on ABCD, whatever that might be, right? You also want to share who they might be able to contact in your absence if something does come up and they need some resolution while you're out. And then finally, commit to a digital detox. And I saw that in chat, you guys sharing it. Put it away if you can. That is your responsibility to recharge, right? So try to digitally stay detached and away. A lot of times people see boundaries as a barrier, but if you shift that mindset and consider it as not a barrier, but more of burnout prevention. Finally, yes, we can plan our reentry even before we leave, and that helps us, whether it's that priority list or not. So plan our reentry, right? There's some things that can help us manage that tidal wave. We shared that at the beginning in chat. I was like, oh, it's too much work when we return. It's just not worth taking the time. But here's some things that we can do. Don't make the mistake of packing your day with meetings and deadlines and things like that. Instead, try to do things like blocking time off for you to catch up a little bit before you start. Book some time on your calendar, or like a meeting for yourself to catch up, right? And sift through some of those emails and mandatory things that you need to do. And remember that parking lot list that we talked about? Put it in a place on your desk that it's prominent. So when you come back, it's right there. It's visible. It's like, okay, this gives you a good place to start. It can help ease with that anxiety of everything that you need to try to tackle when you return. And finally, don't forget to breathe. Set that realistic pace for yourself. Sound good? So we can kind of plan it, plan that a little ahead of time and manage uh, to protect your peace, right? Those are some actionable strategies protecting your peace. Here are a couple other things. Let's start with this idea of the 120-minute rule, right? This means carving out 120 minutes each week for the week, right? In nature, outside. So it can be broken into small chunks, doesn't need to be 20 minutes at a pop or whatever. But research shows that this can significantly boost our well being, right? Odds are, if you're taking the week off, you can probably come up with 15 to 20 minutes a day to get outside, right? Even if you are on a scheduled tour and a fast paced agenda, you can find a way to maybe work that out. So, in chat, right? What are some ways that you would enjoy being in nature, whether it's staycation or vacation, outside for about 15 or 20 minutes a day? Can you think of some things that you could do outside that might kind of recharge you a little bit? Taking a walk? Anything on the screen seem interesting to you? Here are some cool techniques that you might incorporate as you're outdoors, right? And the first one is referred to as sensory grounding. So, for example, this is a technique referred to as the 5-4-3-2 grounding practice. And this involves 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear when you're outside, right? 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste, right? So, doesn't matter if you're at the beach or if you're in your backyard, you can do that grounding thing, 5-4-3-2-1 grounding, right? Here's another one. Here's another strategy. Do it anywhere. It's called the float focus. And this is where participants would actually visualize stress as maybe if you're near water, a leaf floating downstream, and that's your stress. The stress is a leaf and it's floating away. Or if you drop something into a lake or a pond or something, you can see that ripple on the water just kind of phasing out, right? So that could be a stress reducer. That's called the float focus. That's a strategy. And here's another strategy for you. Whether you're in your backyard reading or just sitting out and enjoying your landscape, right? It's called a digital free sizzle, right? Sounds kind of cool, doesn't it? Digital free sizzle. This is a commitment that you make to yourself by leaving the daggone phone inside when you're out there, right? Do it maybe during your next cookout so you can fully engage in those senses in your backyard. Maybe you hear the grill or, smell the flowers in your yard. So that digital free, really take advantage of the fact that that's not bothering you. You're not scrolling constantly. And these are referred to as kind of summer micro moments, right? Being outdoors. Summer micro doesn't have to be a full 15, 20 minutes at a pop, but they're like micro moments that help us get to that 120-minute rule. And that's a way that we can have a really winning strategy to gain the most out of our time away on vacation or staycation. Now, I'm going to introduce 2 concepts that might be a little different, so hang in there with me. And this first one is a different concept. It's referred to as the blue mind effect. Does anybody know what I'm talking about when I say the blue mind effect? It's how being near water, whether it's a beach, a river, even taking a shower, right? And that water pouring down can be a mildly sitting on the beach or a lake, Paula, yeah, how it can be meditative state for us and lower those cortisol level. I mean, just watching that. I mean, when I found this gift to put on this slide, I'm like, that right there is calming me down. So there are some key aspects to this blue mind effect and being near water. There's a brain body benefit in where being near water, such as oceans or lakes or even a pool. It can reduce anxiety and improves our mood and enhances our creativity. There's a neuroscience benefit, and it shifts our brain away from what's referred to as that red mind, that high stress anxiety, that puts out that cortisol, right? And shifts it into that blue mind state with the calming, soft satisfaction, if you will, right? And then the scientific uh, aspect of it is that studies show that water and the environment being around that triggers a sympathetic reduction of that sympathetic nervous system, and that's that fight or flight, right? And it can increase the parasympathetic, which is the rest and relaxation part of our nervous system. And a lot of this happens because our bodies are comprised of at least 70% water. So it's that connection. There you go, tapping in that blue mind effect. And then finally, you guys, here's another one for you. About to wrap up on these last two angles. It's the power of green and sun. And if you had an opportunity to listen to Linda Layton Clark's live virtual last season, she talks about the power in earthing and grounding and doing things outside with the soil and, even cutting the grass or being in the grass. So 10 to 20 minutes of being in the sun as far as outdoors can boost that vitamin D, which is critical for our moods. Anybody experience that seasonal affective disorder when we just have so much gray without that sun? It's tough. Maybe just even sitting out back in the morning. It can be 5 minutes sitting out back in the morning, enjoying your coffee, walking around barefoot, right? In the grass, right? Just feeling that outdoors. Those things can boost you, recharge you, so that you feel recharged when you're coming back to work, right? So hopefully this was a nice little almost staycation for you while we were on the line, because we covered each of these, the benefits, our self-imposed barriers, right? Looked at the pros and cons of staycations and vacations, and then looked at some real actionable strategies. Protecting your peace, right? Remember that. Using that 120-minute rule, which is out in nature. Taking more frequent, shorter like breaks as opposed to that long 2-week or month break. But studies show that, more frequent, smaller breaks can be more advantageous than the long. And then a true disconnection is key for having that restorative reset.